This week, our castaway is the actor Edward Fox. I'm told, Edward, that music means a great deal to you.
Yes, it does, I think.
Is there music in the family?
No, we're not a very musical family.
You play the piano rather well. How did that come about?
I learned when I was at prep school from a sweet teacher called Miss Ticehurst, who's now retired. She allowed my appreciation to develop. It's a terribly important thing, of course. And at an early age, I suppose I got imbued and got to love music.
Do you play discs a lot?
I suppose I don't really. I find if I listen to music, it's a serious business. I can't just turn the gramophone or the tape recorder on and listen, because I find I stop doing everything else.
Did you find it very hard to narrow your choice down to 8?
Quite hard, yes.
What's the first one there on the pile?
The first one is Fats Waller playing and singing My Very Good Friend the Milkman.
Why do you choose that?
Well, it's original talent, and it's humorous, and I suppose in a curious sort of way, it's exactly the sort of thing that's always been said about Joanna's and my relationship. We're always being advised to marry, which is exactly the advice that Fats Waller is being given in this song.
My very good friend, the milkman says that I've been losing too much sleep. He doesn't like the hours I keep. He suggests that you should marry me. Alternative, my very good friend, the mailman.
Fats Waller playing My Very Good Friend the Milkman, and you dedicate that record to Joanna David, right?
I do.
Now, your father was in the theatre, was he not?
Yes, he was.
An agent,
Well,
a
he was an
manager?
agent after the war, and he was an agent for all his life, as well as being other things as well.
Now, you turned down a test for a film part when you were very young indeed.
Yes.
How old were you?
I must have been about 10 years old. And my brother William was about 8. He took the part.
He took it from you.
He took it from me, yes. He had more sense of humour, I think, a vastly more sense of humour.
What was the part?
It was the part of Mrs. Miniver's son. Greer Garson and Walter Pigeon were Mr. and Mrs. Miniver in a sequel of the Miniver story. I'm not sure it wasn't called the Miniver story. Anyway, it was the second part of Mr. and Mrs. Miniver.
And you turned down a chance like that. Why was that?
I felt that it was appearing before the public, and I couldn't bear the idea of appearing naked, as it were, before the people.
Now, you were at Harrow. Were you good at school? Did you achieve
Not
distinction?
really. No, I didn't. I became quite good at playing rackets when I was a colt.
Yes.
And then proceeded not to be good. I wasn't very distinguished at all at school, and I didn't know acting at all.
What was your first job?
My first job was working for Marks and Spencer.
As what?
I began as a porter. I was training to be a department manager.
Were you good as a porter?
Oh, I loved being a porter, yes. I adored unpacking apples.
Well, national service got you out of that.
Yes, it did. Which I did for 2 years.
In the Guards.
Not only in the Guards. I began in the Coldstream Guards. I didn't stay with the Coldstream Guards, or rather they wished that I didn't stay with them. I went to the North Lancashire Regiment.
You weren't tempted to become a professional soldier?
No, I never was, actually. I loved the life, but I could see very clearly its confining aspects.
What happened afterwards? Back to Marks and Spencer?
For a very short time, yes.
Back as what? A porter again?
A little bit sort of farther along the ladder, towards being that dreadful thing, a department manager. Or as I regarded it then, a dreadful thing. It isn't a dreadful thing at all.
Whose idea was it to give that up? Marks and Spencer's or you?
Marks and Spencer's. Quite rightly. They didn't wish to court a subversive
Was there any particular moment or incident or something that sprung the whole thing?
Well, there was actually. There was a sweet, charming store manager called Mr. Margaret, who called me in one Saturday because I'd come to work in a suit that had belonged to a deceased uncle. It was a rather smart suit with a sort of country Prince of Wales check to it.
Mm-hmm.
And this absolutely was not the right suit to wear at all. And he called me up to his office and he said, "Really, you've gone too far now. Don't you know that you should be in charcoal grey?" And I said, "No, frankly, I didn't." But it was the straw that broke his back. He'd been observing my inadequacies for some time.
I see.
And he suggested I went on the stage, which I laughed at. I thought that was a very silly idea.
So what was the next step, having left the cradle, as it were, of Marks and Spencer's?
It was to bore my father to death with what I might do and generally be a lackadaisical slouch at home. And he said, "Oh, well, I mean, if you've got the vaguest notion," which I had, I suppose, the vaguest notion of going on the stage, "I'll try and arrange an audition for you," which he did very kindly with a director called Glenn Blam Shaw,
Mm-hmm.
who listened to me, giving a very bad rendering of Richard III and something else. And eventually my father said to him, "What do you think? Do you think he's any good at being an actor?" And Mr. Barnshaw said, "Well, no, I should doubt it very, very much indeed. But of course you can't tell." He said to my father, "Give him no money at all. Never finance him in any way at all. If you can, get him a course at a drama school, and after that, leave him to get on with it himself." And it was the best advice one's ever been given.
So you went to drama school?
Yes.
And what was your very first professional engagement?
My first professional engagement was in Chesterfield Rep.
Uh-huh. And your first part?
It was in French Without Tears. I can't remember the name of the part. How awful. Babe, I think. His name is Babe.
Oh,
he's
one of the
always called.
stewards?
Yes, he's the young one.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on to do Great Expectations, which was even nicer.
Good. Pip?
Pip.
Oh,
Yep.
splendid.
Alec Guinness'
They looked
version.
after you at Chesterfield.
Yes, oh, yes, yes.
Let's have your second record. What's that to be?
Now, my second record is Robert Donat speaking that lovely ballad of Keats, La Belle Dame sans Merci.
I met a lady in the meads, full beautiful, a fairy's child. Her hair was long, her foot was light, and her eyes were wild. I made a garland for her head, and bracelets too, and fragrant zone. She looked at me as she did love, and made sweet moan. I set her on my pacing steed, and nothing else saw all day long.
Robert Donat, reading the lines of Keats. So they looked after you rather well at Chesterfield. Chesterfield was a fortnightly rep,
Just
wasn't
a
it?
fortnightly rep, yes.
Did you play any weekly rep?
I did at Wimbledon, yes.
Peter Haddon.
Peter Haddon, exactly.
Did you play any wildly unsuitable parts in rep?
Oh, often, yes. But they were always the best value for one, really.
Mm-hmm.
Playing older was always something I loved doing.
What other reps were you in? What other towns?
Well, I spent quite a long time in Dundee and Glasgow, and some time in Canterbury and Ipswich, and Windsor.
What were the best parts you did on stage in those early days? What do you look back on and say, well, I was rather good as what?
I loved playing Teljagin, the old man in Uncle Vanya's, strangely enough. I loved doing Brecht's play, The Good Woman of Setsuan, in Glasgow. I used to enjoy everything, actually, every part. One didn't feel the deep, anxious responsibility that sometimes besets one now.
And there was the odd bit of radio and television, I
Yes.
suppose, to help out.
Yes, there was. I mean, a couple of days on a film was absolute paradise.
Let's have another record. What's number 3?
Number 3 is, it's lovely. It's Elizabeth Schumann singing a Schubert song, Du bist die Ruhe.
Die Augen zu
Elizabeth Schumann singing Schubert's You Are Peace. Now, your brother William, or James Fox, as he was known professionally, was doing rather well in films. He'd starred in The Servant for Joseph Losey, for example. Were you feeling rather left behind?
No, I didn't feel left behind. James and I were sharing a flat in Marylebone at the time that The Servant opened. And I remember being delighted that he had this wonderful break in films, and they never thought that that film would do awfully well, and it proceeded to do extremely well in a commercial sense. And I was very out of work at the time. And we were doing a production of Hamlet, which we'd been rehearsing for 5 months by then, and we were eventually going to do 3 performances of it. And that to me was fun.
Mm-hmm. That was more important, really, than a film.
I always knew that working in those sort of ways was the important thing.
And you indeed played the name part. That was your Hamlet.
That was my 3-night Hamlet, yes. One of them I had roaring influenza.
Of course, your brother James has now given up acting.
Yes, he has.
You have a younger brother, Robert. Is he in the profession too?
Yes, he works in theatrical management, and is very good at it.
You were called to Hollywood for one picture, one of your earlier pictures.
Yes, I was.
Skullduggery.
Skullduggery, yes. I gave it a rude name.
Did you enjoy Hollywood, or was it horrid?
We filmed in Jamaica. I never actually reached Hollywood. The unit had come from Hollywood, and they were they were very typical. It wasn't a very happy film, really.
What was your first film breakthrough?
I think, really, it was certainly The Go-Between for Joseph Losey.
Which won you a British Film Academy Award. That
I was
couldn't have done
very
any
lucky.
harm.
I had the best things in the film to play. Couldn't go wrong, really.
Very modestly put. Let's have record number 4.
Record number 4 is Noel Coward singing his own song, The Stately Homes of England.
Why'd you choose it?
Because I adore Noel Coward and the song, but I wouldn't be without him around one. Great genius.
Lord Elderly, Lord Boromir, Lord Sickert, and Lord Camp. With every virtue, every grace, ah, what avails the sceptred race? Here you see the 4 of us, and there are so many more of us eldest sons that must succeed. We know how Caesar conquered Gaul and how to whack a cricket ball apart from this sorry...
Noel Coward. Now, just 6 years ago, I think it was, you landed the top film role of the year in The Day of the Jackal. Was that expected? Had your agent put you in for the part?
No, it came quite out of the blue. I got a message one day to say that I was to go and meet Fred Zinnemann, the director. And had I read the book of The Day of the Jackal, which I hadn't, therefore would I, which I did. And I then went to meet Fred.
Yes.
And that was how that came about. And he actually had, I think, probably already made up his mind that he would like me to play the part, which was most flattering.
Well, every English-speaking actor with his own teeth was after that part.
Everybody. That's quite true.
It was subtle casting because the character is a professional assassin and you don't look like one.
No, that's right. That was the whole point of it, really.
Is it true that when you were making the film you were indeed introduced to a professional killer or two?
Yes, it was, I think. I mean, I was never told that they were, but I always imagined they did, and they had. I mean, Freddie Forsyth had known mercenary action, probably not on his own account, but certainly he'd been around in the Biafran War.
Yes.
As a war correspondent.
Frederick Forsyth, who wrote The Day of the Jackal.
Yes, yes.
A wonderfully exciting film to make, I think. A lot of travelling, a lot of location work.
Yes, it was very interesting. Actually, apropos of being introduced to mercenaries of that type, Freddie one day said he'd come and have a drink in a bar near the Place de la Madeleine in Paris. It was quite late at night. So I said, OK. I got to the bar, and it was a real dive. And he was at a table with an awful lot of ladies who turned out to be tarts. And it was announced that I was playing the Jackal. And they immediately let out whoops and cries, and I was then made to stand up and felt. My arms were felt, and legs were felt, and fingers were. I said, "What are they doing, Freddie?" He said, "Well, they know how the jackal feels."
Really?
They knew the type of men who do that kind of thing.
Now, despite the fact that it was one of the big box office successes of the year, it didn't bring you the flood of big Hollywood offers one would have anticipated.
No. I think you have to go to America and go to Hollywood and rather pay court to get a Hollywood offer. You must do, if that's the sort of thing you want.
Yes.
It doesn't happen transatlantic, actually.
In fact, some pretty good film offers happened soon afterwards. You played in Joseph Losey's, using that name again, The Doll's House.
Yes.
And you had the opportunity to impersonate a living character, General Sir Brian Horrocks, in A Bridge Too Far.
Yes.
Did you meet him?
Yes, I did, and we do still. We have a lovely friendship with Brian and Nancy.
He thought that you were a convincing Horrocks.
I think he did. He's nice enough to say it was all right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's told me that his daughter couldn't tell the difference, which was even very sweet of her.
Record number 5.
Record number 5 is from the end of Act 3 of Der Rosenkavalier, that wonderful duet.
Maria Olszewska and Elizabeth Schumann in the 1933 recording of Der Rosenkavalier. Now, you were talking of portraying a real person, and in your television series, Edward and Mrs. Simpson, you played the part of the Duke of Windsor. That must have been a rather daunting assignment.
If I thought about it now, I would be daunted, I must say, but I never really thought about it. I thought, my goodness, this will make a marvellous story.
Yes.
And part within a story.
How many installments were there?
7.
Of what, 50 minutes each?
Of 50 minutes each, yes.
Did you do a lot of research?
A lot. All the time.
We now know that the Duchess of Windsor was very upset by the whole thing. Did her views seep through to the studio?
Well, we read the newspapers at the time and learned that she was upset, but I don't really know whether all those reports are really terribly accurate.
Was there any official reaction or protest?
From Buckingham Palace?
Or anywhere?
No, there was no protest. I think there was a desire, quite right desire from the palace, that facts should not be misrepresented, if at all possible.
Yes.
And I don't think they would like the story to be a great romantic violins playing thing, which it has been shown as you know, in other ways in the past, which distorts the whole thing.
Was the palace press office, for instance, ready to cooperate in providing details that you might have been short of?
As far as they could, in a very informal sense, yes, I think so.
Now, what have you been doing since?
Well, now, since then, I did an awful lot of publicizing for the series, which is incumbent on one to do. I'm now doing the family reunion.
T.S. Eliot.
T.S. Eliot.
You have played that before?
Yes, 6 years ago in Manchester. And we've done it in Manchester recently and just opened at the Roundhouse.
And a very successful production it is, too.
Well, you're very kind to say so.
Record number 6.
Record number 6 is Arthur Schnabel playing the last piano sonata of Beethoven, Opus 111 in C minor. And he's playing a little bit from right at the end of the last movement.
An excerpt from Beethoven's Sonata No. 32 in C minor, Opus 111, played by Arthur Schnabel. Is that in your own repertoire, Edward?
No, it definitely isn't. Definitely it is way beyond my wildest dreams.
Now, as an ex-member of Her Majesty's Brigade of Guards, you should be able to look after yourself as a castaway.
Yes, I should. I think I probably could.
Have you been on any tropical locations?
We did a little bit in Kenya for this television series, Edward and Mrs. Simpson, yes.
Oh, of course you did.
Little bit. Just about a week we were there.
All useful stuff.
All useful stuff, yes. It was lovely.
Can you fish?
Yes. Yes, I fish.
Small craft?
Small craft, yes. Can do a bit in a small craft.
Would you try to escape?
Highly unlikely.
You mean you'd quite like it there, or...?
Yes, I think I probably would. I'm quite good at liking what is given me, which is fortunate.
You could adapt yourself to solitude, you think?
Easily.
Right. Let's have another record.
This record is of Winston Churchill making a speech in 1941 to the boys of Harrow School, of which he was an old boy, and I remember him having very fortunately been to Harrow myself. I remember him coming down later on and listening to school songs.
He was always very moved by hearing them, I believe.
Floods of tears. Start to finish, floods of tears. And a lot of raucous singing.
For rights reasons, we're unable to bring you this choice.
Winston Churchill, part of a speech he made to the boys of Harrow School in October 1941. Now we get to your last record. What's that to be?
It is of Dino Lipati playing the piano transcription of Bach's theme, Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring.
Dino Lipati playing Bach's Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring, the Myra Hess arrangement. If you could take only one of your 8 records, which one would you choose?
I would choose that last record.
Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring.
Yes.
And one luxury to take to the island with you.
I would take a large bottle of toilet water called Limes by Floris.
Well, one bottle is very modest. You'd better have a case. 2 cases, but you ought to promise not to use the cases for making small craft.
No, yes, I would throw them back in the sea.
Right. And one book, The Bible and Shakespeare, already on the island. We frown on big encyclopedias.
Yes. Well, you're safe with me. But no, I would choose Evelyn Waugh's trilogy, Officers and Gentlemen, men-at-arms unconditional surrender, if I'm allowed.
Of course, they will be bound together for you. And thank you, Edward Fox, for letting us hear your Desert Island Discs.
I've enjoyed it so much, thank you.
Goodbye, everyone.
You've been listening to a podcast from the Desert Island Discs archive. For more podcasts, please visit bbc.co.uk/Radio 4.